Hi, everybody. My name's Jeff. I'm a SME and also a coach who works with people in the construction industry.
Hey everyone, I'm Rochelle. I'm a proposal management consultant in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry.
And this
is Burnout Banter.
So this month, we're going to talk about self-care. In today's fast-paced and demanding world, it's common to see people neglect self-care. We often prioritize work, family, friends, social commitments, and many other things over taking care of ourselves, which leads us to physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion, i.e. burnout. Some of us may even believe that we're being selfish if we prioritize ourselves above others. But before we jump into today's topic, remember to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen so you can stay up to date with the latest banter. So, Rochelle, what do you think self-care is and why do you think it's important?
When I hear the term self-care, I think of things like hot tea and bubble baths and like sound baths and meditation and like all this woo-woo stuff that sounds really great, but also kind of feels like a band-aid to burnout.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, it sounds
interesting
lovely.
that we see those things as woo-woo though, too. I was just talking to somebody this morning and she was talking about how she's learning how to do Reiki and how that's, she described it as like a woo-woo thing. And it's like, no, if you've done it, it's real. It's not a woo-woo thing. It's just that it's not mainstream. I don't know if you've ever done it, but
I have not.
It's an amazing experience.
I will take your word for it and maybe try it one day.
Yeah, I was pretty skeptical too. And I had a friend who did it and I was like, fine, I'll try it. And it was like the most relaxing hour, like reset thing that I've ever done, I think.
Oh, that sounds lovely. I'll take an hour of relaxation.
Without being touched, right? So they're just moving energy. So
extra love that.
Yeah.
I'm too sensitive for massages, so maybe energy movement is what I need.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I do think it's that things. It also can be like taking a walk or taking a break from work to eat lunch. Or
interesting that lunch would be a self-care thing. Like as a proposal pro, I often skip lunch or I am scarfing something down at my desk. I don't know how many times we've gotten on a call and I'm like, sorry, I'm just finishing whatever snack I was able to shove in between proposal deadlines. But it is self-care to nourish yourself. And I don't think of it that way. That just seems like basic human function. Feed the human, not care for the human.
Well, I mean, so much so, right? It was law that you had to give people hour lunch and 15-minute breaks every so often throughout the day. And we've just kind of steamrolled over that.
I was going to say, is that still a thing? Because it definitely wasn't for some of my employers.
Yeah. I don't know if you work for yourself if you have to follow the laws, but maybe you should.
I'll talk to my boss.
So why do you think it's important then?
I think we need to take space in between work. How do I want to say this? I feel like, at least as Americans, we wrap up a lot of our identity and our day in productivity and work product and what we do. And we forget that we are human beings, and just being a human being takes a lot of effort, right? Like you have to nourish mind, body, and soul to be functional. And I think we forget that. And so that becomes this self-care that we have to remind ourselves to do. But because we have so much wrapped up in the work identity, like that gets cut so quickly. And it's so important because you can't be productive if you are not being a peak human, right?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, even right, they look back to like farming and stuff, right? Like a lot of the work that this country was founded on, that was way more physical than what most of us are doing. And they always took a break, right? Like they couldn't plow through the whole day without eating lunch or anything like that. So,
well, now we have mental, like sitting at the computer writing all day is more of a mental work. Yeah. And you have to take breaks from mental workloads as well. And yet we just plow through. And if you do that for your muscles, your body rebels in very horrible ways.
Yeah.
And your brain does too. You just don't see it the same
our
way.
mind does as well.
Yeah. It just sneaks up on us because we're not very self-aware generally, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've always heard is about the longest you can be productive without needing a break is 90 minutes. Once you,
I would agree
and
with
you
that.
have to work up to that, right? Like you can't just jump in and say, I'm going to go for 90 minutes.
Right.
In peak focus, you have to like build up to it. Start with 15 minutes, build to 30, build to an hour. And actually, if we keep pushing past that 90-minute mark, our productivity starts to really go down.
Yeah, even if you stay working on the same thing, if you take 10 minutes, like get up from your desk, roll out your joints, that's super important. Like grab a glass of water, eat a snack.
Yeah.
Yeah, hugely important for that mental break.
So what are some things you like to do for rest?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I rest? I thought this was a do as we say, not as we do show.
Yeah, do as we say, not as we do. I forgot.
Kidding. I have been trying so hard because I do cycle through burnout frequently. And I notice immediately, I've gotten better at noticing immediately when I start cutting the basic human care things. So I very much like to cook elaborate meals because it like pulls my focus. It's nourishing my body. It's nourishing my mind when I'm trying something new or like mixing and blending things. I love
it's creative, which we've talked about as one of your core values.
Is one of my core values. Yes, I can be very creative in the kitchen, mixing flavors. Sometimes it's wonderful, and sometimes it's a horrible disaster. I frequently, thank goodness for my puppies, or I might not break nearly as much as I do, but they have to go out every couple of hours to play ball, or they will just destroy my house. So I'm often outside playing ball with the babies. And now that it's getting warm, they're playing ball and I'm gardening. And then I come back and I go back to work.
Yeah. Gardening's great. That's great. A big one for me is video games.
Yes.
Kind of a mindless activity that allows me to rest. Although I can get a little competitive with them. So that may not be quite as restful as I think it is.
I always think that video games are going to be really restful, and I get really excited when I plan an afternoon of just gaming. But then I play like adventure games and I have to like solve puzzles or like coordinate this thing over here to get it to this person over here, or I have like a goal for a game where I'm like grinding through something. I'm like, I'm going to tame this dinosaur, but to do that, I have to like mine 50 million metals, and the insight into Rochelle's nerdiness there. Yeah. But it takes forever and it doesn't actually feel relaxing because I'm so like on edge about completing this quest or doing this thing. But
yeah,
it is relaxing in a different way.
Yeah. And, reading's another one of mine, but I find that if I read fiction, that's much more restful than nonfiction, especially like self-help type books. So I make sure that I have some time for fiction reading built in.
I try to alternate because I really struggle with nonfiction. So I try to alternate, like I'll read 2 fiction books and then try and work my way through a fiction or a nonfiction book. But I've seen studies that show that reading fiction is actually better for your mental health. Like it helps with empathy, it helps with creativity, it helps with like relationships because you're like putting yourself in the feet of these characters, and also with mental escape. So for those of us who feel pressured to read nonfiction like I do, the research says we don't have to.
Okay, that's good.
we can live in the world of high fantasy and we're fine.
I used to read a lot of nonfiction, and I've really been in a period where it's a struggle for me. And so it's okay. I'm going to listen to that and read more fun books.
My towing into nonfiction has had to be really sensational. Like I had to read Into Thin Air about the Everest disaster in the 90s.
Okay.
Or I read about one of the Rockefellers getting like lost in a cannibal island. And it's nonfiction, but man, it doesn't read that way. That's how I had to start.
Yeah. Now, has there been a time where you were not very good at giving yourself rest, or in present day or in the past?
I've been really good lately. But last year I felt like I was constantly burned out because I wasn't giving myself rest. And that's, like I said, I noticed very quickly that I give up the things that I try to prioritize for self-care. So like I stop making elaborate meals. And then that just becomes like, can I throw a baked potato in the microwave? And then that becomes, well, DoorDash. If I just DoorDash, I have no prep time. And then that becomes like, well, do I have leftovers from DoorDash? And it just progressively gets worse. Or like literally my dog right now, even though we were just outside, just is bringing me all of her toys and they end up in a pile next to me. And that's how I know like, oh, we haven't taken a break recently. Or in this case, she's just needy. But usually if there's a pile of toys at my feet, it means that I haven't been taking care of my babies, which means I haven't gotten outside, which means I haven't taken a break.
Yeah.
And it's not good.
Yeah. I mean, I know when we first had kids, that was a huge time of self-care neglect.
Oh man.
But I almost found that it was more self-imposed than anything else, right? Like I would feel guilty if, for my wife, right? If I were to go do something to take care of myself. And so I just wouldn't ask instead of saying, hey, if I go do something, then you can go do something and we can each get our own self-care in and still be taking care of the kids, right? But each of us was, I think, stuck in that guilt and, trying to be mindful of the other. And it got to the point where we just weren't taking very good care of ourselves.
Oh no. Well, you were taking care of a tiny human, which I don't have tiny humans. So I can't even imagine how much effort that takes. But I imagine it would be easier if
you can also take care of yourself while doing it. Yeah. And, I found times at work too, I think in the past, self-care is the first thing that goes, and I can tell the difference just in how I show up every day and my attitude towards work. And
it's interesting that we cut us first. Like for my outlook on humanity is sometimes very bleak, but for very selfish creatures, we are very quick to shut ourselves down for others. Even if it's not, altruistic or anything like that, but like shutting yourself down for work or for your tiny human or for your significant other. I find that very interesting. I don't really have a point there. I just wanted to
I think it's a good point. I mean, even before we had kids, we took a parenting class or something where it was like how to maintain your relationship through having kids. And one of the most important things that I thought he said, and even though we didn't listen to it very well, was your kids are here temporarily, right? Like they're a huge part of your life temporarily. At the end of it, they go away. And if you don't nurture your relationship and nurture yourselves, like there won't be anything left if everything goes into the kids while you're having them. And I think as they've gotten older, we've gotten better at that. But
it takes practice, right?
Right.
It's all about practicing.
Yeah. And I mean, even right with work, right? At the end of the day, work hopefully goes away, whether it's for the night or for the weekend or for whatever. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, then there's nothing left to give.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What happens? Sorry, go ahead.
No, we're bantering over each other.
We're good at that. Or I'm terrible at that. I was going to ask, like, what happens when you just keep sacrificing yourself? You keep giving up your self-care. You keep giving up pieces of yourself for other elements of your life.
Well, we have physical responses to that. We have mental and emotional responses to that, and it can really damage our relationships, whether that be with friends or family or loved ones.
Right.
When we're not taking care of ourselves, we don't sleep as well. We eat poorly. We don't exercise. We don't get up from our desk.
I'm raising my hand over here. I know no one can see it, but I
that's the physical consequences, right? And then stress, being in chronic stress, feelings of burnout, and we are decrease in self-esteem or self-worth, but it's some of the emotional consequences of not taking care of ourselves.
On like that mental fatigue of not taking a break. I feel like that you need that to help with emotional regulation. I know I do. Like if I don't do something creative, because we've talked about this before, like I'm a compulsive writer. And if I don't write creatively, which helps me very much to regulate my emotions, if I don't do that for a long time, that's when I start sending very like short, spicy kind of grumpy things, even if that's not really where I'm at in life. Like everything can be totally fine, but if I'm not dealing with my emotions or I'm not, coming up for air mentally, taking that 90-minute break or that break at 90 minutes, man, a 90-minute break would be great.
You can take a 90-minute break too.
I did yesterday. I took a
That's
2-hour
good.
lunch, mostly because I ate too much pasta and fell asleep. So, and the world didn't end. It
That's
was
right.
great.
But an exercise is huge for me, even though that doesn't seem like it's rest. It's a break from whatever you're doing. And even I've had to redefine that for myself, right? We talk about expectations all the time. We think of exercise. It's like, oh, I need to be in the gym lifting weights and swimming and running. And no, it can be going for a walk. Even something like that, I notice a
Absolutely.
huge difference in my mood.
Oh my gosh, walks are amazing for just regulating brain activity. Like, because you can shut down for once and just be. You just, I love it. I love it. I wish it wasn't 1,000 miles an hour of wind out here right now, or I would be walking all the time. But
Yeah. Yeah. And I've even noticed like I have a sit stand desk and it's been down for a long time. And so last week I was like, I'm going to stand. I have this desk that I paid for. And that was like a nice break. It was just a change. Uh,
yeah, I've got
so
one of the yoga balls that I don't have a fancy sit stand anymore, but I occasionally will swap my desk chair for the yoga ball and like just when I'm doing something that
she's
doesn't
wiggling.
require I'm wiggling. But when I'm like doing something that doesn't require like a whole lot of immediate brain power, it like helps distract me because I'm like focusing on like keeping my balance straight and it's kind of fun.
Yeah. So what do you think gets in the way of us taking care of ourselves? What are some things?
I think a lot of it comes back to kind of the culture we've built around what human life needs to look like when you hit adulthood, right? Like we frown upon uh, laziness and idleness. And so we have to constantly keep ourselves busy, like whether
Hustle
that's with
culture.
work or with a hobby. Yeah, hustle culture. I have a friend who absolutely abhors working. He is in between jobs right now. He typically doesn't hold a job for more than 4 months. He gets enough to hold him over for 8 months, and then he'll look again. But he's got like a 2/3, 1/3 thing going for his year. And I don't know what he does or how he makes enough money in 4 months to last him 8, but he is totally happy with that. And he gets so upset when he has to look for a job and he gets so upset when people are like, well, why don't you turn one of your many hobbies into like something profitable? And he's like, because then it's work again.
Yeah.
And what if I just want to enjoy things? What if I just want to lay on the couch and stare at the ceiling for a little bit? Like, I should be allowed to do that. And people look at him, and I'm guilty of this too. People look at him when he talks about his life and they're like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
What do you mean you're in between jobs for the third time this year? Or you just took a third vacation to somewhere unknown. Like, how did you, like, it just doesn't compute. And I think a lot of us fall into that culture of busyness.
Yeah.
It's just wild.
Yeah. We're also taught from a young age that self-sacrifice is noble and virtuous, right? So everybody's
Yes.
more important than us and we should put everybody ahead of us.
Yes. That do your best mentality for everybody else also. Uh I saw the term gifted kid burnout recently.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, so like if you're again speaking to the American public school system, but like if you were a gifted kid, you were singled out as not better than your peers, but like more advanced, I guess. And you were put on this like higher expectations, like you were given extra work. You read more books and you wrote more reports and you did more projects. And I think being given that from such a young age, you are constantly doing and you're constantly told that you need to be doing.
Yeah.
I'm really stuck on busyness.
Yeah.
I guess I have gifted kid burnout. I don't know.
But you see that in athletics too, right? And especially having
Mhm.
kids and watching kids who are really good at a certain sport, like they just get pushed so hard. And it's like, as an adult, I'm sitting here watching this happen, and it's like, man, this kid is going to hate this sport by the time they're like in
Yes.
their middle teens because they're being pushed so hard.
Yes. Like, why can't we just enjoy things? Why do we have to, you're good at it, so we're going to push you even harder.
Yeah. Yeah. Another big thing that happens, right, is we don't self-reflect enough to know what's really important to us.
No, we
We
are
we get wrapped up in
horrendously,
what society says is important, and so we chase that.
right? Going back to core values a
Yeah.
couple episodes back.
We have fear of judgment and guilt.
Absolutely.
If I was talking to a client the other day, and he would take a lunch break and go for a walk or go for a run, and other people wouldn't. And so there's all this like, well, what are they going to think of me? Are they going to think I don't work as hard if I go for a run at lunch versus sitting here at my desk and just cranking through it?
Oh, I feel that. I had a very short period in one of my past employments where I would walk down the street to go get lunch, and I would take my full hour and read a book and come back, and like nobody else in the department had taken a break. That ended real quick for me.
Yeah, yeah, but it
I
wasn't ended by anybody else. It was probably ended by you.
it was because I would come back, and it, not that anyone would say anything about it, but there would just be like a comparison of, how much did they get done in that hour that I didn't, or, what did I fall behind on, even though we're working on different proposals, different assignments. I felt like I wasn't enough, and it was not good, and it was not true. I just was comparing and felt like I was letting my team down if I wasn't there when they were there. And
Yeah, what was actually probably true instead was that by taking that break, you were more productive in the afternoon than they were. And you probably got
quite
more done throughout the
possibly,
day than those who just stayed there and pushed through the whole time.
one of my coworkers is like superhuman, so I don't know about her, but yeah, probably for the rest of us.
Yeah.
I probably, that mental break, I really did need it to get back to, because I also just slag in the afternoons. I'm a morning person. And so I
Yeah.
need that break to restart. And yeah, not taking it got really hard. And I think after several months of having not taken a full lunch anymore, I started to kind of resent my role, my position, the workload. But you're right, I was self-imposing it. I
Yeah.
like, nobody said I couldn't take my lunch. I just didn't.
Right.
And then I was mad at them for it, which is
Yeah.
not fair.
Yeah. And I think, knowing whether you're a morning person or an afternoon person and kind of scheduling, if you need to be really creative, I'm a morning person also. So it's best for me to do that in the morning. And, if I'm in more meetings in the afternoon or email, that's kind of better matches my energy.
I save admin for the end of the day when I don't need a whole lot of brain power, even
Yeah.
though I really struggle with admin stuff. But like, it'll take me 2 hours in the morning or 2 hours in the afternoon. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I've heard people say that, if you can't create time for yourself, you have poor time management skills too. But I guess I would challenge that. I would just say, we all have the same amount of time. I think we're just not as aware of what's important to us, and we prioritize other things, whether that's right or wrong. I think we just prioritize other things. It's not that we're probably bad time managers.
Yeah, I agree. I think for some of us, maybe it's a time management issue. I definitely am a procrastinator. I've definitely seen procrastinators inflict things like this upon themselves where, they didn't have time to do things that they needed to do.
But
But
procrastination isn't because you're poor at time management. It's because you're avoiding something, and there's something else going on there that's leading you to procrastinate, not your poor time management skills.
that's fair. That's fair. I love when people say like, oh, everybody has the same amount of hours in a day as Beyonce. I'm like, okay, yeah, but Beyonce has like a whole team of people to get her through her day, and I don't.
That's true.
So
But
tell
she started
me,
with the same number of hours in the day, I guess.
she did. She did start there. But when people say that, they don't tend to mean that. They mean like now.
Yeah.
We work with what we have, the resources that we have.
An interesting exercise is to track your time um,
Yes.
in just in categories, right? Like important categories of life. So self-care could be one of them. And most people, when they do that for a week, find 2 to 3 hours of time that they were spending in ways that wasn't as important to them as some other ways they could have been spending it.
I think that'll help with the lack of awareness. I
Mm-hmm.
think You gotta put in, I don't know where I was going with that.
So we talked about some of us seeing it as selfish to take care of ourselves. Why? I mean, how do you view selfishness? Is that a bad thing? Is it a good thing?
I mean, selfishness is negative to me, right? It's you don't want to be perceived as selfish in the workplace. Kind of like I felt selfish for taking that lunch. You felt selfish for thinking that you should or could go do something self-care while you're raising your tiny human. But I think there's a difference in actual selfishness and then like self-care,
Mhm.
self-prioritization. Like self-care is not selfish, it's self-prioritization. Selfish to me is like you have the opportunity or the availability to take on something that would alleviate maybe a team member within your normal working hours. It wouldn't add any additional burden to you. And you just say, nah. And like maybe you have good reasons for it, but that feels selfish. Whereas like if it was going to put you over or if it was going to be negative to you in some way, saying no would be self-prioritization.
We've talked about, right, like, staying at work late when, your kid has a soccer game or whatever, right? And so is it selfish to want to go to your kid's soccer game? I would say for the definition of the word, probably, but is that a bad thing? I would say no.
Right. Like culturally, is that selfish? No. Dictionary definition. Yes. And I guess it depends on who's making the call. Your boss might think it's selfish because they need you there, but
Yeah.
your kid does too. A kid might think you're selfish for staying at work. So
Yeah. I'm sure
nobody
there are lots of
wins.
kids who do think that of their parents.
This is why I can't have tiny humans, because I
Yeah.
would be that mom.
So if we can create some self-care in our life, what are some benefits that you see in doing that?
I think it's a lot of the things that we talked about, taking that mental break would alleviate your mental fatigue. It would help you regulate your emotions. You'll be healthier if you're eating better, if you're exercising, if you're taking time for yourself, mind, body, soul, all that good stuff. It sounds woo-woo, like we said, but it's actually important to nourish all of those. We talked about increased productivity, right? Like you take a
Yeah.
break, you're going to do better. There's a reason.
Yeah. And
So
as we grow in our career and lead others, right, the more we take care of ourselves, the better we are able to lead others too. If we're
exactly.
depleted and one of our staff members or family members comes to us and they're depleted, we don't have much bandwidth to show them much empathy. Um,
Exactly.
at the height of, and I'm going to admit this, it was not the best thing to say at the time, but at the height of my burnout with work, my wife and I were talking one night, and she's like, you don't save anything for us at night. And I was like, I'm so busy taking care of 40 people during the day. I don't have time to take care of you. And that didn't go over well.
Oh
But that's what I
no.
felt right, like, or that's what I
And your
felt like.
feelings are valid, but
Uh,
maybe it could have been conveyed differently.
yes, that was a terrible thing to say. I wouldn't recommend anybody say that. It was not well received.
I can feel the scathing anger from here, just like through time. Oh man.
But that's when you're burned out and you're not taking care of yourself, right? And I probably was not showing up very well for them, and even at work, right? I probably wasn't showing up as well as I could have if I created some time and space for myself.
Exactly. Exactly. You can't bear other emotional burdens if you can't deal with your own. You can't deal any burdens if you can't deal with your own.
Yeah, I mean, all of those things, right, add up to more success in our career, more success in our family, more success in our lives. So it's an important thing that a lot of us neglect.
Extremely, extremely. And I know you love the term work-life balance, so I'm just gonna lob it at you. But I feel like if we recognize self-care as a critical component of our life as human beings that need to nourish, that need to take care, that need to rest and relax and enjoy life, we're not just like little cogs in corporate machines that can go, go, go. you'll find better balance between your work life because you're going to be, like we said, more productive, more satisfied, and you'll obviously be better taken care of in your not work life. And so they'll maybe balance each other out better or align better.
Yeah, right. That's very well said. Yeah, so in the construction industry, it's very demanding.
Mm-hmm.
People work long hours. There's high levels of stress due to budgets and deadlines and client demands, and it's easy for us who work in or support the industry to neglect our own well-being and prioritize work above all else. And so a lot of us do struggle to take care of ourselves, but it's essential for healthy work-life balance and achieving long-term success in any role you fill in the construction industry. It's an intentional practice of taking care of yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally. And if we do that, we don't burn out.
And it is not selfish to not want to burn out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good for everybody, you and your employer. So take care of yourselves, y'all.
Yeah.
And now it's time for burning questions.
All right. So our burning question today is, what are some ways that I can create rest for myself at work in order to recharge? We've talked about some today, I think, but any other ideas or things that we haven't talked about?
So the first thing that came to mind is maybe not a great thing, but at one of my past marketing lives, it was so hard to find space in the calendar to take a break that a couple of the marketing people made like a mini pact. And we would put marketing meetings, just generic marketing meetings for like 15 to 30 minutes on the calendar so that one of us could go take a nap in our car.
I like that.
Which is, maybe it says a lot of things and maybe it wasn't the most effective way to deal with that. But you had two people covering for you and one person got to take some much needed rest, which was really important, especially, if we were working until midnight the night before and coming back in at 7:00. It was just wild. You need those naps. I don't recommend that as a permanent solution, but as a creative opportunity to create space for yourself at work.
Well, but the idea of scheduling rest in your calendar is very valid.
Absolutely.
I'll schedule like a 90-minute focus time, and then I'll schedule a little break, and I can mark it as private. Nobody knows what I'm doing. And then I schedule another 90-minute focus session if I want to create those times to really be creative and then have some downtime also.
I have an hour blocked off every single morning for writing. It's supposed to be an hour for creative writing. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't, but I have it blocked on the calendar just in case, inspiration strikes and I really want to do that. And I usually do. There's very few days when I give it up, but it's on my calendar.
Yeah. Another thing is to involve other people in it. You schedule a walking meeting, and at a previous job, we had like a lunch bunch thing where like 3 or 4 people were supposed to go out to lunch with each other once a month just to get to know each other a little bit better. And so that was like a scheduled thing.
And that's also important. We talked about that a few episodes back, like having support, like a network of support people. So nourishing soul right there.
Yeah. And I guess the other big thing I would say is try not to overthink it, right? We get in our head about what it should be, and that blocks us, right? If I can't go to the gym for an hour and a half, that means I can't exercise today because I can't live up to my expectation of what I should be doing, when there are a lot of different ways you could get that exercise in that's just as effective as going to the gym for an hour and a half. But I think that's where a lot of us get hung up, right?
Right. Expectations versus reality. And we just have to manage those and work them into, like I said earlier, whatever resources, whatever time you have available to you, figure out how to use it wisely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another big part of it, right, is just practicing. So if you're not doing it now, to expect that you're going to be able to schedule in all the rest that you need and not have anything bad happen, or, not have it fail, you're probably setting yourself up to fail.
Right.
So, start with one little thing a day and see how that goes. And then you can adjust and maybe add a second thing. Or, if you're worried you're going to get in trouble for taking a lunch, try it and see what happens. And if you
Exactly.
don't get in trouble, try it again and see what happens. And you may just shock yourself. You might not get in trouble for taking a lunch.
You probably won't. Speaking from experience, it was probably in your head.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, I would say track your bad habits. So that's how I have to do things, like going back to the whole I order food out too much when I get busy. So I've started making a note on my calendar every time I order out. And if my calendar starts filling up with too many circles, then I know that I have started to veer into stressed or tipping towards, burnout is coming. If I have ordered out 3 days this week, that's real bad.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Because I recognize my unhealthy habits. I'm one of those people who sees the negative before the positive. So I check those first.
Yeah. No, I like that idea.
Yeah.
So it's just practicing. That's really all we're doing, is trying to build a new habit, and we're not going to be perfect at it.
Nope.
But the more
you'll get better at it.
Yeah, you will. And I think the more we practice it, the more we see the results of it. And the more that encourages us to keep trying.
Exactly. And it might inspire the people around you to also and start eventually building a culture of self-care and no burnout. And that is the ultimate goal of all things.
Yeah.
Is to reverse this burnout culture. So
anything to add for this question? Or do you think we answered it?
I think we answered it. I think, make a plan for success, recognize your habits, build in time. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah. And share with us, if you've tried something, we'd love to hear how it goes. And, if you ever want to talk through anything, reach out to either of us. Yeah, we all need support when we're trying something new.
And we do. And we're here for you.
I think this just happened at the SNPS Southwest Regional Conference that we were at, but somebody was talking about accountability and how important it is to have an accountability partner, and tell 3 people that this is what you're trying to do, and you're much more likely to do it. And
yes. Yes.
We're 2 people you can tell.
Ta-da! Hold yourself accountable. Message us. You can email us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com. Let us know. All of your information you send us is private. We care about you. That's why. But we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and if you have a question you would like us to address in this podcast, you can use that same email. But
absolutely.
Thanks for bantering with us today. And just a reminder to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen, so that you can stay up to date with whatever we're bantering about.
Excellent.